Shares of Goldman Sachs are trading down 2.5% today after the investment bank beat on the bottom line but missed on the top. But here to talk about what's happened to Goldman over the long term is Steven Mandis. He's the author of the brand new book, What Happened to Goldman Sachs? Welcome, Steven.
Thank you.
Now, you were at Goldman Sachs for 12 years before and after the IPO, but I want to find out, before we talk about what's going on now, what made Goldman great back then?
Well, when the business principles were written in 1979, they had emphasized putting the client's interests first, an emphasis of teamwork, of sharing of information, and socializing employees to make sure that everyone was working together and having the same views.
And that code was strictly adhered to, but things changed after the IPO. There was an organizational drift, as you call it in the book. Can you tell me what happened?
Sure. My hypothesis when I started writing the book was that the IPO changed the culture of the firm. And some people now are trying to blame Lloyd Blankfein or the current executives of change in the firm's culture. But what I found is that actually the changes were occurring as soon as they wrote the business principles in 1979. There were a variety of pressures, technological pressures, competitive pressures, and other things, which started to push the firm slightly away from its original meaning of its business principles.
And the major business principle was supposedly be long-term greedy. But because of the IPO, did Goldman Sachs become short-term greedy? And did a lot of Goldman's faults become brought out, evidenced by the 2008 collapse, because there were firms on Wall Street that would not do business with Goldman because they saw them as sharks?
So even before the IPO, there were significant cultural changes that were happening, in part because of the growth, because Goldman started to grow very quickly outside of a very small U.S. market internationally, as well as started to grow into trading and other businesses. So that was happening well before the IPO. The IPO, in many ways, was a result of some of those changes. But to put into context some of the things that were happening, in the late 1980s, Goldman had an opportunity to get out of an underwriting agreement exercising a legal material adverse change clause, and technically could have gotten out of it. But instead, they chose to go ahead and do an underwriting and take the losses because they had made a verbal commitment. Today, I think when you look at the testimony of Goldman Sachs executives, they point out that they legally adhere to all the responsibilities they have to clients. And that is a different approach than it was in the past.
And right now, it seems as though that Goldman is trying to be better in the public eye. You see Lloyd Blankfein really playing ball with Washington. But a lot of people still fear that it's just a charade, that deep inside, Goldman is still a shark. What do you think? What's your view on that?
I don't think it's just a focus on the public eye. I think Goldman, because of its cultural traits, is trying to take in information and trying to see if there are modifications or changes or re-emphasis of cultural things in the past that they should be pushing forward with. So I think they are taking it quite seriously internally with the Business Standards Committee and other things.
And to bring it back to today's earnings, their bond trading was down. Is Goldman appropriately staffed or in the right businesses? Are they thinking long-term still, or are they just going to shed, just like the rest of Wall Street, shed their bond staff when bond trading is down, and then when it picks up again, hire them more? Or are they going to think more long-term?
Well, I think even when you look back historically, especially in the late 80s and in 90s, they were laying people off and hiring people back, which was a cultural change from what it was in the early 1980s. So I think that not just Goldman, but the rest of Wall Street will probably continue this trend, which does impact the culture.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steven.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching The Street.